Okay, this is homework number 1. It was photocopied in white. So here's our first white homework number 1. And there's a couple of ways that I'll show you how to do this. First off, you need to remember that m, which happens to be slope, that's how we identify slope, m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so where does that come from? It comes from our coordinate points. Well, the first coordinate point, you know that this is x and you know this is y. You know this is x and you know this is y. Well, we would get confused if we labeled x and x, y and y. So we simply just put a subscript 1, because that identifies the first coordinate point. And we put a subscript 2 and a subscript 2 because that identifies the second coordinate point. And so then we follow this formula right here that we wrote down. So y2 goes on top, our y's. And so we're taking the difference of the y's. So we have negative 15 minus a negative 16. Keep in mind that this negative right here does not mean the same as this minus sign. Okay, that's why I have to put this negative, it goes right here, minus comes from right here, and this negative is right here. Okay, you're taking the difference of the two. So always, there will always be a minus sign in the middle. All right, so then we have the y's on top, and then we'll take the x's on the bottom. So we're going to put negative 7 minus 19. Okay, and then we know that this sign, these two signs right here will turn into a positive, so we'll rewrite it as negative 15 plus 16 over, and then you can leave these as is. It's negative 7 minus 19. Okay, now you can do these separately. You can do the top, and you can use any calculator that you have, and you can put negative 15 plus 16. Hit enter. You know that the top number is going to be 1. And then for the bottom, you type in negative 7 minus 19. Then you push enter. And then you know that the bottom number is going to be negative 26. Therefore, your slope is negative 1 over 26. This negative can go to the denominator, or the negative can go to the numerator. Or you can simply just write it off to the side. And then we will box this in because that's my answer for number 1. Okay, so let's try number 2. Number 2, I'll show you a different way. You know that your y's are going to go on top. So here we go. I'll highlight my y's. This is a y. This is a y. And then I know that my x's are going to go on the bottom, so I'm going to highlight my x's. And my y's, I'm going to simply write negative 19 minus negative 7 over 1 minus negative 2. Okay, so I need you to pay attention to what happened on the first example. The first example, I wrote negative 15. I wrote my y2 first. And in the second example, I wrote my negative 19 first, which happens to be my y1. Now, if you notice, the formula calls for y2 first. It doesn't matter which way you subtract as long as you subtract the numbers. And you have to stay consistent. For example, if you do negative 19 minus negative 7, you have to do 1 minus negative 2. You can't switch negative 2 and 1 and try and subtract them. It has to be consistent. So I simply go to my calculator. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to hit alpha y equals because that sets me up and an option to type in for a fraction. So on the top, I'm going to type in negative 19 minus negative 7 over 1 minus negative 2. And I've had students ask, well, do I have to put my parentheses? No, but whenever you're writing it, it looks funny. Because if I were to write negative 19 minus 7, what is that? It doesn't look good, so we usually put parentheses so that we understand, okay, it's negative 19 minus negative 7. On your calculator, it's been asked, is it okay if I just type it in? Yes, it is, because the calculator understands. But keep in mind right here, this is your negative and this is your minus. So this is how we type it in. Negative 19 minus negative 7 over 1 minus negative 2. Enter. Does it give me the same answer? Yes, this is my slope, negative 4. And we'll box it in because that's the answer for number 2. You can use either way. You can use your formula and do it by hand, or you can use your calculator and use alpha y equals. So right here, this method is using your calculator that is provided at school, unless you have one at home. Alpha y equals.